So we're back working with assignment 7 now. Now that we've gotten our edge flow problems out of the way, we're just going to focus on now shaping. So at the moment things are not shaped very well. You know, we've got a lot of spacing issues and a lot of shaping issues with the head at the moment, okay? Since we did all those strange things when we were improving our edge flow, you can see, you know, for example, on mine here, we've got this little dip in the forehead going on, and the top of the head here is really relatively flat, okay? The face as well, you know, some of this geometry is not quite where we want it to be. You know, one of the biggest issues here is definitely spacing. So, you know, you can see we've got these great big giant polygons down here. If I go to face mode, you can kind of see all these great big giant ones. And these ones are kind of medium sized. And these are little tiny thin ones, and little more little thin ones, and then great big ones, and even bigger ones. So, you know, things are just not spaced evenly. And also when we look at, you know, some of these areas as well, we can kind of see a clear distinction between the back of the head, all right, and the side. There's kind of this sharp corner going on here, and we're just not getting that nice round feeling for the neck and the skull, okay? So, you know, we're going to go in today and start working on this spacing and the shaping to really improve this and finish it up so that we can mirror this side back over and move on, all right? I'm going to go ahead and get rid of our little reference guy here. So sorry, we're not going to deal with that guy anymore. That was just mostly to demonstrate edge flow. And then also the eyeball here. We're going to be working a lot in our orthographic views, and you can see when we're working with the head in the orthographic view, it's going to be really hard to see some of these verts that are near the eyeball and distinguish between them, okay? So let's get rid of the eyeball. Well, we're not really going to get rid of it. We're not going to delete it or anything like that. We're just going to move it just like we did with the other one. So I'm going to come here to my eyeball layer and click on the R there to take it out of reference mode. All right, so now I can select it again. I'll select it, and again, you know, this is the same as the other eyeball that we had over here. Okay, we haven't frozen the transformations on this eyeball yet. All right, so we want to do that first. I'm going to come up to Modify, Freeze Transformations. I'm going to set those all to 0s and 1s so that I can easily place my eyeball back into place when I want to. I'm going to move it forward, and I'll move it off to the side as well so that it doesn't get in the way of our face geometry no matter which view I'm looking at it from, okay? So the first thing to note about shaping, I think that'll be the most helpful for you while you're learning the shaping techniques, is that oftentimes in shaping, the outside edge, the silhouette that you want to create, is the most important factor, okay? So you're always going to be wanting to get these outside edges placed where you want them first, okay? And you can use those once you have a general rough outline of what you want to kind of guide the rest of your edge loops, all right? So I'll start with the skull here, and we'll deal with the face in a moment, but you know, first we'll just kind of get this back of the skull curve going, okay? And that'll kind of demonstrate what I mean. Now I can see through the face at the moment. I'm just going to turn on the shading right here, smooth shade all, so that I can, you know, kind of see everything a little better, see these gradients and things. And I'm also going to turn on X-ray, all right? So It's a pretty slight difference, really, but you know, now I'm getting a little more shading as far as depth goes, but I can also kind of see where things are leading. All right, so what I'm going to start with is this center line here, okay? This center line that's going down the back of the skull. All right, this is basically going to be the highest point on the skull in the center, okay? It's going to come the farthest out in the back as well, because the skull is generally sort of a rounded shape or an oval shape, more like, okay? So, you know, we can count on this being pretty much the highest point, the furthest back point, all right? And everything that's further in, okay, or further away, I guess, from the center line is going to be, you know, lower down or further in towards the center of the skull. Okay, we can use this center line as kind of a guide for, you know, the absolute silhouette. All right, so let's get started with this. I'm going to go to vertex mode. And, you know, at the moment, I've got this right here. I'll take a look at it, our silhouette from the side here. And, you know, based on what's happening with the face, I'm actually going to pull that in just a little bit, okay? It's not going to be super dramatic, but something like that. Then I will travel upwards along this center line, and I'll place this as well, okay? I'm going to put it right here. Okay, and I'm kind of disregarding all these other verts that are, you know, not to do with the center line. Anything that's not part of the center line, I'm pretty much going to be ignoring, okay? I might move this up a little more just to improve the spacing. So pretend all this other inside stuff doesn't even exist for now, okay? I'm just working on this outside edge and getting a shape that we want for the skull. Now, at the moment, you know, this slope that we've got going here from the forehead is actually really short, okay? So, you know, it's coming up here from the eye, and here's the forehead, and then immediately it turns back, okay, and creates this really flat shape on the top of the skull, okay? Actually, this is going to come out quite a bit, all right? And this is going to round out a lot, so I'm going to pull things up pretty dramatically just to achieve the kind of shape that I'm looking for, all right? Because I'm in my orthographic view as well, it's easy for me to just grab this center of the handle and just move it around where I want it to be, okay? You can do that as long as you're in your orthographic view. We'll be okay. I'm going to move these away a little bit from the center line. Because it's getting a little crowded in there. A little difficult to see where all my verts are. So anytime you have verts kind of right on top of one another like that, that's an indication that you have a very flat line going along there. So you've got a flat spot on the skull, all right, which we don't want. It should be nice and round. Okay. So you're going to see me changing this skull shape a lot, all right? And I'm also going to pay attention to how far apart these vertices are spaced from one another. For example, right here, this is a pretty short distance between these two, okay? But if you look between these two, it's a much further distance. We want to keep things about the same distance away from one another as much as we possibly can. Okay, so something like this, we might move over just to make up for those spacing differences. Okay, now it's going to be pulling on the geometry around, every which way. You can see we've got this, sharp angles going on now, but that's all right. We just want to make sure that the distance between these verts on the center line is fairly even. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect, but try and keep those roughly the same size. Okay. And again, here we've got kind of another flat spot on the skull, so sometimes you'll need to come in here and grab these from the perspective view, because you won't be able to quite see them. They'll be behind other verts here. All right. And just come all the way around the head here and get this outer skull shape just the way you want it. I'm going to move all of these over a little bit because they're kind of getting a little bit in the way of the silhouette there that I'm trying to create. All right. Okay, so something like this is going to be the silhouette for the skull. Okay, it's going to be this nice rounded shape. Okay, make sure it's not flattening out at the top here. It should stay nice and round and just slowly curve into the back here. Okay, and then as it comes back this way, it's going to gently change shape as it comes into the neck. All right, so it's going to change direction, going from a curve that's going this way to continuing down that way. All right, that's going to kind of lead into the spine, if you can imagine it. So, when we look at this in our perspective mode, it looks super messy because, nothing else is following this outline. It looks like we just pulled a bunch of stuff way far back, and, if we just mirrored it over like this, he'd just look like, Mohawk guy at the moment. So the next thing we want to do after we get this outside edge established is to go to the next edge away from that center line. Okay, so this one right here, this edge loop. Okay, it's just one away from this center line. And we'll start shaping that edge based on the silhouette that we've given ourselves with the center line. Okay, so let's do that now. You'll see what I'm talking about. I'm going to start here again and just work my way back all the way back around and down to the bottom of the neck, one vertex at a time. Okay, so we'll start with that one. Now, because this is fairly close to the center of the head, it's going to in this side view, it's going to come pretty close to this other vertex here, all right, this outside vertex. So these are going to come pretty close, and they're going to create these long rectangular shapes. When we're all done, you know, when you look at something from the side here, these will look mostly like large squares, and things closer to the center line will start to look like long rectangles, and that's just because of the way that we're viewing them. They will actually, in perspective mode, look roughly the same size as one another, okay? But when viewed from the side, we'll get something that looks thin up here close to the outline and larger polygons in the center, okay? Just has to do with the angle we're viewing them at. So I'm going to just bring these up, and I'm just going to mimic this outline that I've created, all right? So pretty straightforward here. Just placing these all about the same distance away from that center line, from that outline that I made. It's going to get a little difficult in here because, again, we've got these kind of flat areas where we won't be able to grab these from the side because they're all sitting directly in a row, all right? So you may need to grab some of these in your perspective view window here, okay? So these are kind of following along with our outline from the side now, but there's another angle that we kind of have to take into account before we're really done with this edge loop, and that is, you know, if we look at this from the back or the front or the top, how is our spacing doing? Okay, so we started out with this nice skinny rectangle, and then we saw this kind of balloon outwards, so it's quite far away from our center line, and we still have all these edge loops over here that are just kind of squished when compared to these great big polygons we have here. So we also have to come in and move these, you know, in the X direction and get those situated where we want them to be in the X direction, all right? So, you know, again, from the side, when we were moving these around, we were giving them Y and Z positions, all right? So they're looking good in Y and Z. Now we just need to make sure that they also look good in X. So since we've already fiddled with Y and Z, we don't really need to touch them at all. We can just deal solely with the X direction now and try to even out this space. Okay, so I'm going to bring them in. There we go. About this big, pretty consistently. And you know, this is kind of a rough guesstimate of where they'll wind up. Once we get more things in place, more edge loops in place, or at least roughly in place, then we can go back in and tweak minor details and spacing and things like that. All right, this was just to get us in the ballpark of where, you know, these might need to go. All right, so after we've you know, adjusted our X, Y, and Z positions for all of those, okay, then it's time to move to the next edge loop. All right, so that's going to be one further, which is this one right here that's going around. Okay. Again, I'm going to start right here, and I'll go all the way back around to the back of the neck. And we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to put this about right there. I'm even going to come down here and bring this one forward a little bit, okay? Or maybe I'll even bring this one out, just to even that out as well, okay? This one also is going to be placed fairly close, alright, to the one next to it, alright? So these again are going to be creating kind of thin rectangles. Just following the outline we've already established. Okay, so we've got our outline set up in the Z and Y direction. So now it's time to go in and fix this up in the X direction as well. Okay. So you know what might help to kind of visualize this is to, you know, we've kind of established this right here as kind of a 45-degree angle turning point for the skull. All right. So, you know, it may help to come in here in the X direction and just kind of try to even out the spacing, alright? Just on one of these loops, make sure it's nice and even so that you don't have these big long edges here next to little short ones, okay? So you're basically just trying to make all of these polygons as close in size to one another as you possibly can. Right. So it may help you to, you know, come in here and start to move these where you think they might need to go to keep that spacing even. Okay. So we know from kind of looking at the eye and how the spacing is going on here, these are going to be about this far from the next edge loop, right? And we can just kind of apply that. It's going to get a little wider in this area on the top of the skull because the skull is going outwards here, all right? But as you come closer to the back, it's going to thin down again. So something like that. Now that we've got that all taken care of, it's on to the next set of edge loops, okay? And if you see any problems with your shaping anywhere, on a, an edge loop that you've already dealt with, go ahead and fix it. Like, for example, that was maybe a little bit dipping down, so you can just come in and fix it up quickly. All right. So the next edge loop is going to be this one right here, going all the way back. Let's do the exact same process once again. This is, basically all there is to it. So we're going to be, placing these again kind of based on our outline up here. This time, the rectangles that we're seeing aren't going to be quite so thin, all right? That's just indicating that this shape, as these are coming down, is curving more towards us, to face us, all right? So the larger the rectangle that you're seeing, the more that polygon is facing towards the camera, okay? Okay, so that looks about right for this one. Now let's go into our perspective view and go ahead and adjust it for X. Alright, this looks pretty even, so we're fine with that. Just come in here and try to even these things out. It's okay to move around, things that you've already moved a little bit. Just trying to get that spacing nice and even. Those are probably fine. Now, at this point, I'm going to stop for a moment and say, it's also probably a good idea right now to establish that outside outline of the top of the skull as well, okay? Because right now, our outline is pretty flat. After we come to the side of the face here, you can see what's happening is we've got this kind of dipping in, coming out a little bit, and then remaining pretty flat through here before it curves around. Okay, so that's not the ideal shape that we want, and if we get that shape kind of blocked in, it's going to help us shape these as well and help us with our spacing there. So we want to get kind of a rough idea of, how this head shape is going to look from the top. Okay. So, again, we're dealing with outlines, all right? And we know that this point right here is kind of this roundest part of our head, all right? So this is, if we were looking at our head from the top, okay, down. This right here is kind of our outside outline, all right? This is gonna be the largest part. So this is the edge loop that we're gonna be dealing with to give us kind of an idea of what sort of shape we want this to be in when we look at it from the top, all right? So we're doing kind of the same thing we were before, which is establishing our very outside-most outline and what it should look like, all right? So I'm gonna turn on my shading again. And I could do X-ray for this, but I'm not going to, because if I do, I'm also gonna see a lot of information for the neck and a bunch of stuff underneath that, and it can get a little bit confusing. So this we can probably just do with our wireframe, okay? Now, this curve that we have going here is, you know, probably fine. It's pretty nice. Right about here is where it starts to go wrong and starts to dip in and flatten out pretty dramatically. And then here as well, it kind of dips into the head, all right? So let's kind of rework this a little bit, all right? I'm just gonna pull this out. Okay. And this is gonna look a little bit funny at first, but it'll get there, okay? So we're just gonna make this nice rounded shape. Obviously it's not gonna be a perfect circle, because our heads are more oval shaped, but it's gonna be rounder than it is right now, all right? Sometimes we'll need to come to perspective mode to really grab these. As you can see in some places it's gonna get a little close to the side of the head there, all right? But you can see where basically we're just rounding this out and adjusting the spacing. And you know, we may come up with a pretty round shape and decide we want it to be not so round, and we can just go back once we get this basic idea in and make small adjustments then, all right? So I want my outline to look something like that. Just a nice oval shape, all right? And we'll also want to come in here. We were dealing in the Z and X direction that time, so we'll also want to come in here and adjust this in the Y direction to make it look as smooth as possible. Okay, it's coming out from this part of the eye here. So we don't want this to have any sudden zigzagging lines, all right? We want this to be a nice, smooth curve. We can leave everything right where it is in the X and Z directions and just deal with Y right now. And again, you know, it's gonna look a little bit funny up here, and that's because we've moved a lot of things around, but that's okay, because this is our guide. So this is gonna govern what's gonna happen with this, and we'll fix that based on what we have going on down here, all right? Again, just double check, take a look at your spacing. For example, this is, you know, really a long edge next to a bunch of little teeny tiny ones, so, you know, this is a spacing problem here. There we go. Okay, so it's a little better now, but just watch out for that kind of thing. Make sure you get your spacing right, and the rest will follow, okay? So we've got that now kind of set up, all right, this outline, and we've got this outline set up. Now we can just kind of use both of those as a guide to get things where we want them to be. I'm going to start working, rather than continuing around this way, I'm going to start working this way for a moment, okay, to get things where I want them to go around this way, all right? So again, something that's close to our outside edge, we're going to pull forward quite a bit, all right? And it's going to be, you know, kind of close. This is just indicating that these faces are not really facing directly towards the camera, okay? Now I haven't worked with this edge loop right here yet, okay? So this is all new. We haven't touched this one yet, all right? And here we have kind of this odd corner area. Don't worry too much about that, just get it looking, you know, something like that. That's fine. Alright, and I'm going to work on the next one here. I'm going to move this back a little bit. You can see, you know, we've got kind of another weird little corner area here, but just keep this a nice round shape that sort of mimics our outside edge, okay? This is another edge loop that we haven't dealt with yet in the Y direction, okay? So, you know, as we go further and further inwards here, we're still mimicking this outside shape, okay? So we're gonna pull this out a little bit and try to make this seem a little bit rounded, okay? At the moment it was just cutting straight across. We've got this round outline, so we're gonna try to mimic it a little bit with this edge, all right? So it's just kind of gonna round the corner here, but it's also going off this way, okay? It's just a nice smooth curve. So you can see we've made things look pretty nicely rounded from the top. Okay, so it looks nice when we look at it from this view. It's not going to look as nice when we look at it from a different view, but that's alright, because we're going to fix that. So we got that kind of sorted out. Now we want to look at it from the side and see, okay, you know, it looks great from the top, but now does it still look great from the side? And we can make it look nicer from the side just by pulling these verts up or down, okay? And now we're just basing it again on our outside silhouette here, all right? Okay, so that's probably fine. The next thing I'm going to deal with is this next one right down here. I mean, you can see kind of where we've got all these nice verts in a row up here, and then here we have these big giant faces that just kind of don't go with the flow. So we can start adjusting those too, all right? We're just gonna bring them in closer. But, you know, again, even though they're closer, they're facing more towards the camera as the head is curving more towards us, alright? So these are going to be bigger than the ones that are one edge loop closer to the center line, okay? They're going to be quite a bit bigger because this is where it really, the head really starts to curve towards the camera, okay? So for this right here, what we want to happen is for this to just kind of end off right here, okay? So this should be creating this nice curve around, okay? So it'll look like this edge loop's just kind of coming into nowhere and stopping, alright? Now that I'm getting into this as well, looks like this one's maybe a little far forward. Can move that back a little. That's all about following the outlines, the outlined curves that you've made, and keeping spacing consistent. If you do those two things, you'll wind up with some good shaping. All right. Now we haven't really messed with the bottom here yet, where the neck is. So we can start doing that just a little bit. All right. This is just a start to get an idea of where these things are going to go. I'm going to move a lot of this stuff down. Okay. So you can start to see where we're making a little bit of progress here with smoothing out these shapes, okay? It's just a matter of coming in and making these tiny adjustments, all right? Okay. So, I'd say that the top of our head actually looks great right now. So, this is pretty much done up here. Everywhere below that still has some major spacing problems, obviously. And a lot of zigzaggy lines, a lot of funny stuff going on. I'm actually gonna, for a moment, step down to the bottom here where the neck is and start to move this kind of into line, alright? Basically, this is coming out from the corner of the mouth, and it's winding up right there at the back of the neck. So I'd like to keep that as a nice, smooth line that just kind of, if I were to draw, like, a diagonal line from here to here, okay, then it just kind of come across like this, all right? So that's kind of the simplest way to make this shape work for us. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna kind of make this just one smooth line leading to the back of the neck from the corner of the mouth, all right? So I'm gonna grab this stuff and just kind of move it sort of into position, more or less. I'm gonna move this down just a little bit, and this as well in anticipation for that, all right? So basically, slowly we're gonna go from the corner of the mouth here all the way back and down to that neck area, all right? So we could just look at it from the side and try to make this progression as smooth as we possibly can, all right? So you want things to just continue in a really gentle slope. If you see any zigzaggy lines like this kind of thing, you want to alleviate those just by bringing them into line. Now this isn't actually a perfectly straight line, it is a gentle curve, okay? And as we come a little closer to the mouth, the curve is going to become a little more dramatic, alright? Now we haven't really dealt with the shape from the corner of the mouth either yet, okay? So at the moment we've got this really pointy mouth corner going on, and it's coming in like this, swooping back, and a sort of round shape happening here, but not really, okay? So we also want to establish our outline for the neck and the chin as it leads into the face here, alright? So that's another important thing to kind of map out. So, I'm gonna say the silhouette of the face is pretty good, alright? That's all fine. So, really it's gonna be a matter of moving things back. Alright, so this corner of the mouth is fine where it's at. This, should be moved back quite a lot. Move this back as well, alright? And also, make sure you look at things from other angles too, like from the front, for example, to see what this looks like, alright? This is another one of those things where we really need to establish yet another outline. Okay, this is kind of that third view where we need to establish that ultimate outside outline, which is what we haven't really done here yet. Okay, so I'm going to say that the widest point, okay, if we look at the top, we've kind of already established where that widest point is. It's going to be right about here, alright? This on our skull at the moment is the edge loop that's sticking out the furthest in the x direction, alright? So this is going to be the edge loop that kind of fashions our outline from the front. We look at it from the front, alright? So let's take a closer look here. Alright, this one that's one back from that one as well is pretty close. Okay, so, you know, either of those would actually probably be fine. I'm going to use this one, okay? And I'm just going to do the same thing I've been doing, which is to establish an outline here. Now, you know, as soon as I do this, it's going to change the shaping of the rest of the skull as well, okay? So, just be prepared for that. There's a lot of instances where we'll shape things, get them generally where we want them, and then, you know, we'll need to move them or adjust them. But luckily, kind of once you get your outlines established from the front, from the side, and from the top, you're good to go and you have your guides all in place, alright? Alright, this is where it kind of starts to go wrong. This really should be a nice rounded skull shape. Should come all the way down here, okay, before it starts forming the neck. Alright, this is where it's kind of flattening out and sucking in on the side. So I'm going to be pulling things out a lot here. And I'm also moving this way up, as you can see. That's to keep my spacing consistent, alright? We want this spacing to be consistent. At the moment, we've got these great big stretched polygons here. We haven't really dealt with this edge loop yet. So, we just go ahead and keep that spacing on your outline even, and then we'll deal with the rest of these. It's going to look crazy at first, but we'll get there. And again, we're going to get kind of this super raised bump mohawk thing going on. But once we get this into place, then we can more easily shape the rest of the head, skull, and face, okay? So this has come out, this outline is you know, a little bit far away from this corner of the mouth here. Okay, that's to make room for this round shape of the face away from the corner of the mouth, okay? So this is the kind of silhouette you'll be going for here. It's going to come around, nice gentle curve. It's just going to swoop in and change directions. It looks actually very similar to the outline of the back of the skull here. So if you compare this shape to this shape, you will see they're very similar, okay? So you can kind of use that as a guide when you're making these shapes, all right? So now we've got another outline to work with. Let's start moving stuff around. You can grab these, start moving them into line. Same principles apply. We just want to move them, you know, if they're next to this outside edge, then we should be moving them fairly close because they're facing away from the camera. If they're further in, they'll be, you know, pretty far apart, okay? Same old, same old. Sometimes we'll need to grab things in perspective view because they'll be really difficult to see from this view, okay? That's just showing that they are sitting all in a straight line and they're just creating a flat surface, all right? Anything round, we're going to be able to see each individual vertex. And I'm going to move this a little bit to improve the spacing here, okay? The spacing was a little off. Okay, that one looks good. Next one in. And you'll see that these areas that we've already kind of worked with, like the top of the head here, are generally going to be already more or less in the right spot, okay? There's not going to be too much adjustment going on there. Really, once we get down to these parts we haven't worked with, this is where, you know, we're going to see some dramatic movements. But it's important to come up here to places you've already worked with a little bit and readjust. For example, this right here is not properly following this curve that we've got going on, okay? So we do need to come in here and adjust it. Same thing here. This one is not really following. I'm not going to be talking really a lot during this process at this point because we've pretty much covered the main points that you need to understand about the process. But I'll still go ahead and go through it so that you can see how it should look when you're done, okay? So it's also important at this point to establish what you want your neck shape to be, okay, when viewed from the top and bottom, okay? So take some time and come in here and grab kind of the center edge loop that will form the neck, alright? And start pulling some of these out a little bit to round out that shape, okay? And as usual, it's gonna look a little crazy at first, but it'll get there. So we've evened out, at this point, everything from a side view at least. Okay, so our side view looks like spacing is pretty even. You know, maybe right in here it could be a little better. And that's just a matter of moving some of these verts up and down to just change the spacing of this curve just a little bit. So you can see where, you know, things are flowing pretty smoothly. You've got that nice outline, and most of these polygons are roughly the same size as those next to them, okay? So from this angle, looks really nice. Obviously it doesn't look nice from every angle, because we've got this big old dent hanging out in the head here. So let's work with some other angles to help improve this. Again, just keep working on spacing and smooth lines, alright? Here's an area, for example, where we just need to follow our outline that we've set, which is this right here, okay? So start pulling some of these over. Again, you know, we've already dealt with this in the Z and Y directions, so now it's just a matter of pulling them out in X to mimic the curve that we've set up there. moving quite a few of these lines up a little bit to improve my spacing on the back of the head here. So if you're wondering why I'm doing that, that's why, because the spacing is was a little bit large up towards the top and getting squished down here in the neck region. Okay, well, you get the idea there. So now that we've gone and done that, we've got some pretty round shapes going on for the head here, okay? Since I moved a few of these things up a bit, it did move my outline a little, so there are a few things that I might want to pull outwards just a bit. Just to keep the integrity of my outline. So, once I've kind of tackled this from looking at it in a lot of different ways, I've looked at it from the top, I've looked at it from the side, I've looked at it from the back, I've looked at it from the front, and I haven't looked at it from the bottom, but, that would be the logical next step. The last little bit that you would do there would be to properly space out the bottom here. Okay, I'm not gonna do it right now because I think you get the idea of how that would take place and how to space that out. I will space out this little tiny bit next to the mouth and chin, okay? Basically just because we do need to be able to see how to deal with the face now, okay? We've dealt with the whole skull, but we haven't really looked much at the face itself, okay? So I'm going to apply, a lot of these same principles to the face. Okay, I've got this kind of outline going on here. At the bottom here of the chin, though, it is very sharp edge, alright? So, obviously, we don't want super sharp chin. I'm going to bring that stuff back a little bit. And this is, again, just all about that whole idea of the outline, establishing an outline. Alright, so I'm going to come to my center here, and this is where I'm going to establish my outline. I'm just going to bring this stuff out just a little bit, just so that I can see each individual vertex that I need to work with. And just kind of place them along the outline in a place that makes sense and makes good use of spacing. Alright, so I've got a bit of an outline established. I can start to follow it now in the usual way. Let me pull that out just a little more. So this is going to be, really very similar to the rest. So that looks fine from the side, but obviously if we look at it from the front, it's still pretty uneven. Okay. So again, this is just a case of now taking things in the X direction and adjusting them that way. So once we've dealt with that, we've got a pretty smooth chin flow going. Again, you know, the bottom here is not really spaced out correctly. You could pretty quickly come in here and start dealing with these. All right. You just want to start moving this stuff over in the X direction, all right? Or at the back here in the Z direction to mimic the outer edge loop there, okay, the outline. Just try to place things so that the spacing is as even as possible. Okay, that's all we're gonna do with that for now. Let's focus again on the face and getting the face as nice as we can get it. I'll take this little dip in the nose here and just pull it out a little bit, okay, so we can really see that silhouette, that outline of the nose. We worked a lot with the shaping of the nose when we fixed the edge flow, so we don't have to worry about it too much. But, you know, again, just remember to look at these things from multiple angles. We'll look at the front of the face for a moment and kind of get an idea of how to smooth things out and keep our spacing pretty happy. So our spacing is pretty good up here. You can see, however, here we've got these nice faces for the nose, but then the faces next to them, you know, you can barely see, which indicates that this is at a sharp angle to the camera right now. So what that amounts to is a sharp nose, so a nose that's kind of square. Since we're going for an organic look, it's going to involve a lot of soft curving geometry. So we don't really want anything that's super stark like that, okay? So we'll pull this in a little bit. We can even pull the corner of the eye out a little bit to soften that up. We just want to pull these things away from each other just a little, to soften up that nose so that it's not super square. All right. So a nice rounded look. It helps to look at it from different angles. You know, again, look at it from the top, look at it from the side, round it out. So that's fine. The eye looks pretty good. I mean, we worked on that before, so that's fine. The one thing that you might notice is kind of a problem here is that we've got this nice mouth geometry coming from the bottom of the mouth here. We've got a bunch of geometry coming from the eye that really has a lot of room for shape. But here we have these great big polygons, okay, next to a whole bunch of little tiny ones, so the density here doesn't really match the rest of the model, okay? So we're actually going to add a couple of edge loops here. Alright, so I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Insert Edge Loop Tool, and I'm going to put one right here to break that up. And I'm also going to put one right here. Okay? And once I've done that, it's not enough to just set them there. That hasn't actually changed the shape at all. I have to go in and grab these vertices now and hit Q to quit my Insert Edge Loop tool so I don't accidentally add any more edge loops. And now I'm going to shape these. Alright? Just follow the shapes you've already established. Now at the moment I'm only moving them around in the Y and X directions. Okay? You can shape other things while you're doing this too that are nearby. Help improve your curves. But these are going to be roughly where you want them to be already. Alright? So this will mostly just involve very slight movements, alright? Oops, okay. Hopefully you don't grab things that you don't mean to. I grabbed the vert on the back there. Okay, so I've adjusted those from the front, but let's also look at them from the side, okay? What you should see happening here, ideally, for the face, is you can see where we've got this kind of brow outline going on. But at the moment we haven't really shaped this edge loop, this frontmost one. We want it to be kind of rounded, alright? Just making a loop around the face, like that. Okay, nice and round. And what we should see is this swooping in to the eye, okay, where the corner of the eyes would be kind of right here in this section. And it's going to swoop back outwards underneath the eye. All right, and then we're going to get this nice kind of rounded shape right here where the cheek is, right? And then it's going to come back the other direction and around the mouth, okay? So that's the kind of shape we're going for. We're going kind of a scoop inwards this way, a curve the opposite direction before changing direction once again, and curving back outwards around the mouth. So let's go ahead and implement that. I'm going to be moving, you know, some of this stuff around. Just a constant process, really. Just all this shaping stuff. So what we're going to see is a change in shape here from this round shape that we've got going on to a shape that's a little more of a curve, like this, and then outwards, and then back around, okay? So I'm kind of establishing where I want this cheek outline to go, all right? Setting up this outwards curve. So it's going to curve out from the eye like this, all right? We'll move these outwards as well. The eye itself is going to come back just a little bit, all right? So we should kind of see these ring shapes going like this around the eye, all right? This is just more of kind of the same thing we've been doing, where we've been establishing outlines and following along with them. But this is on kind of a smaller scale, since we're just dealing with certain areas of the face rather than with the entire skull, okay? So each little area is also going to have its own unique outline, okay? So, you know, that's improved the shape of our eye socket just a little bit, and also brought out a bit of a cheekbone for us, okay? Could probably be a little more dramatic. So here, you know, things would be maybe a little closer, okay? This as well. Okay, there we go. So now I can really see that pronounced cheekbone there. The eye socket looks nice. We've got enough geometry on the top and bottom of the mouth. The nose is smoothly shaped and no longer blocky. And we've dealt with the rest of the skull. So I'd say, you know, at this point, we're totally done. This is shaped, and we're good to go, all right? And it also, you know, it looks pretty smooth already, even though we don't have it in Smooth Preview. And that's really what you want to shoot for. You want your model to appear smooth as it possibly can before you go into Smooth Preview mode, all right? You already want your geometry to be sound. So the last thing we need to do is mirror this over now that we're done with it and pop those eyeballs back in the skull, okay? So let's go ahead and mirror our geometry. Just grab it in object mode, okay? And we're going to go to Mesh, Mirror Geometry, and we'll just grab this little option box here. And the direction that we're mirroring the geometry in is actually -x, okay? So if we look at this little handle right here, we can see the different directions in space, okay? X represents the positive x direction. So anything in this direction is positive x. Anything in the opposite direction, okay, is going to be -x. So we've got this, and we want to flip it over in this direction, which is -x. So make sure you have -x selected here. Make sure you have merge with the original and merge vertices selected. And go ahead and hit mirror. Okay, so you're going to get that, which is obviously not what you want. So make sure that you come into the channel box / layer editor here, and you can see right here under inputs, there's something called Polymirror 3. Alright, that's the mirror that we've just done. We can retroactively change different attributes about the mirror. You just click on that, and it opens up this little menu. What's important here is this value called merge threshold. Alright, this basically determines how close vertices have to be to one another to be merged together as part of that mirror process, alright? So at the moment, too many are getting merged together. We don't like it. We don't want that. So I'm going to change this to a smaller number. I'm going to go 0.01. So at this point, only vertices that are very close together are going to be merged, okay? And we see we have a problem here with that. You know, it's still pinching these nose vertices. So even 0.01 is too much, okay? So we'll even go smaller. We'll go 0.005. Alright, so when I hit 0.005, you can see that pop back into shape. You know, it's a good idea to grab some of these verts and mess with them just to make sure that they are in fact sewn together. Alright, they are. Make sure it doesn't come apart along the seam anywhere. Alright, so the integrity of your center line is good, just double check it. And, you know, when you mirror things over, you can start to see some shaping issues a little better. Like, for example, you know, maybe the neck here is just sticking out just a little bit too much in the center line. So you can then adjust those things, alright, when you can see them a little better once you've got that figured out, alright. So that's good for that. We'll put the eyeballs back where they belong. All we have to do is just grab one and type in 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, and it'll be right back where it started. Okay, same thing here. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. And your scale, translate, and rotate. Alright? So, now the eyes are back in the head. The head has beautiful edge flow. It has beautiful spacing. And it's pretty much perfect. So, except for that right there. You can see where maybe our merge threshold was actually still too big. So I'm going to change it to 0.001. Okay, now it's perfect. Or as close to perfect as it's going to be. So go ahead and go through and really take some time on improving the edge flow and the shaping. Thanks for watching. That's going to be it for this video. Let me know if you have any questions about anything that we went over today, and happy modeling.